Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Journey Through Torah. We have some amazing things to look at this week. We're continuing the saga of Israel being prepared to come out of Egypt, and they have to make some preparation. There are some things that they need to do to walk out of Egypt as a people redeemed, understanding that Yahweh is the one that redeems. He is the one that restores. He is the one who heals. He is the one who brought the people to himself. But at the same time, the people had to leave Egypt behind them. We see that was a problem continually throughout the wilderness, because we see people grumbling and complaining in the wilderness. Hey, we should just go back to Egypt, or it would be better if we would have just stayed there, or did you bring us out here to die? I mean, all of these kind of things. But the people had to make preparation within themselves to have the mindset to walk out of Egypt and leave Egypt behind. And we do see that was a struggle for them. That's a struggle for us sometimes too. We have to learn to not just see ourselves as being redeemed and being free and remind ourselves of that as a people who have been redeemed, but we have to learn what that means. We have to learn how we walk that out. And that's action. You know, there's some things that are involved in that we need to do, as well as it's a change of mindset. Now, a big deal with this is identity. You know, when Israel had to come out of Egypt, they had to see themselves as a people of Yahweh. They had to see themselves as his people, a one nation, one people for Yahweh, a nation called Israel. See, so we've got to see ourselves as a collective group of people that belong to him. Because it's easy to say, well, I belong to Yahweh, but it's something else when we have to see that also has an impact on how we live in this world and how we treat each other, and to see the kingdom here now. So there's a lot that has to happen here. And let's be mindful that, yes, we serve Yahweh, but we're also supposed to work with our fellow human being in the process. Okay, so as we get into this portion, I know it really is a lot. It can be kind of overwhelming at times, but there are a couple things that I feel are very important here, and as identity, and it kind of help us change our mindset a little bit. Okay, so are you ready? We're going to get into Parsha Bo, and the first thing I want to point out is this. The fact is, Israel is yet to be delivered. They haven't been delivered yet. They're still in Egypt. They're still slaves. But yet, when Moses addresses them, he addresses them as though they are a free people. I mean, here in this Parsha, they haven't even left yet, and Moses is telling them about Pesach, about how to make preparation for Passover, and saying, we're going to come out. And when you come out, this is what you're going to have to do. This is what you're going to have to bring. You're going to have to go talk to your neighbors, and this is what has to happen. And so he's already getting them prepared to come out. And this is a big test of faith, too, because they had to stop to see, okay, what do I do with this information? Do I just sit here and wait, or do I have to actually do what Moses says? You know, Yahweh, yes, he wants us to hear him, but he wants to obey him. You know, even Yeshua says, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. It's not just enough to hear his voice. We have to follow him as well. So here we are in Egypt, and the children of Israel are being called out from this, and to stop identifying themselves as Egypt, stop identifying themselves as being oppressed in Egypt. They have to learn that they are a people that are redeemed and that are called out. But we do at the same time need to remember where we came from. You know, when we think back of the way life used to be, it's not for the purpose of going back. It's for the purpose of seeing how far the Father has brought us, and to see what he has brought us through, to give a testimony to him. I mean, he's done it before. He'll do it again, right? So let's look at this. If you forget where you came from and why you came from there, you will lose your identity or your connection to your heritage and your purpose. If you forget, you will see yourself as a citizen of a nation among nations, one ethnicity among many. And if you forget the story of freedom, you will eventually lose freedom itself. We need to be reminded of who we are, Not just who we were, but yeah, we need to see who we were, but we need to be reminded of who we are, and we need to be reminded of the Father's plan for who he is calling us to be. See, it's not just looking back to go back and not just saying, well, here I am now, but it's also looking forward to see what he's called us to. And this is the freedom that we are supposed to walk in. Okay. Now look about this. To learn your true identity as a covenant people. This is what we're looking for. Without a specific identity, it is almost impossible not to lapse into whatever the current idolatry of the age is. Oh, wow. Do you stop to consider that? Without a solid identity of who you are and what you believe, you're liable to believe anything that comes down the road. You're not going to have any discernment, not going to have anything. You're just going to do what seems, okay, well, that makes sense for today, and that's what I'm going to do today. Makes me think of Israel in the time of the judges, and everybody did what was right in their own eyes. Where do you ever see that turned out to be a really good thing? No, we have to have order, and we have to follow the Father. And this is part of the process of redemption, actually. He redeems us. He brings us to himself to teach us his ways. Now we have to walk in those ways, right? So if we don't listen to him and walk in his ways, we're open to really whatever, anything. Things like rationalism, idealism, nationalism, fascism, communism, postmodernism, relativism, individualism, hedonism, consumerism, all of these things. However, a society based on tradition alone crumbles as soon as respect for tradition dies, which it always does at some point. So we can't just build a society or a people around, well, these are our traditions, because at some point traditions do change. As we see, from culture to culture to culture, at some point traditions change. So what do we do with that? We can't just base something because of tradition. Again, we have to look at identity and we have to look at relationship. Okay? He is our God. We follow him, and not just doing something just for the sake of doing it. Okay? Identity provides a link and a purpose. And identity, which is always particular, is based on a story. Think about it. Our identity is a story. Our identity is a narrative that links us to the past, and it guides us in the present and places on us responsibility for the future. See, as we walk in a collective story, not just traditions, as we walk in our story, it tells us who we were, who we are, but also puts on us the responsibility to pass it on to the next generation, to continue to tell the story. These are the things that we're looking at, okay? So if we want our children and our society to be moral, we need a collective story that tells us where we came from and what our task is. So speaking of Exodus, this story is especially told on like Passover around the Seder table. It's always the same, but it always changes because the dynamics of it's always changing. An almost infinite set of variations on a single set of themes, and we internalize in the ways that are unique to us, but yet we all share the same historically extended community. This is from Jonathan Sachs. The idea is we're taking these things, they're for us, it's on our own, but at the same time, we're making it our own. We're doing these things, but we still have the connection that has come before us. Don't lose who Yahweh has called you to be. Don't give up who he has called you to be for who we were, right? Okay, so let's go and take a look at this in the story of Exodus. Moshe comes to Pharaoh and he's telling him to let my people go and all these things. And Pharaoh has a very interesting question that is posed to Moses. And I think it really tells the heart of the world out here today. Okay, let's take a look at it. Exodus 10, 8 through 11 is what we're looking at. We're going to do verse 8 and 9 first. So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go serve Yahweh your God, but which ones are going to go?" Consider that for a second. He says, okay, fine, go worship your God, but who's going to go? What do you mean who's going to go? What does Moses say to him? He says, "We will go with our young and our old. We will go with our sons and our daughters. We will go with our flocks and our herds, because we must hold a feast to Yahweh." He is saying, we're all going. There's none of us that are going to be left here. There's none of us that are going to remain. We are all going. And so this is, again, the redemption that was to happen among the people of Israel was to happen to all Israel. They were bringing them all out together as a group of people. All right. So we go as one, or we don't go at all. The point of that I believe that Moses was making then, and is still relevant for us today, is that we need to worship together as one body. We need to worship in the community of believers and not isolated or independent from it. We see more today. People are being removed from assemblies, being removed from their congregations, and we need to make sure that we see ourselves as a part of a people. Because if we're isolated, that's going to cause us more problems, especially the harder life gets. It's going to cause us more problems. We even see in Acts 15 where the disciples were speaking, and they said, there are 4 things that we start as a basis to kind of start off with, but then don't forsake going to the synagogues on Shabbat to hear the Torah taught. See, so this is part of our growing process, not just to hear the Torah taught, but to go to the synagogue on Shabbat, to assemble together with the people of Yahweh on Shabbat to hear the Torah taught. When we hear that Yeshua, he taught in the countrysides, he taught out in the places, and they gathered in the homes and all these. Yes, they did, but none of this forsook gathering in the temple or gathering in the synagogues as well, because we also read where Yeshua was in the synagogues on Shabbat. So again, not one of these things is replacing the other. They are all working together as part of the relationship and community building that we see being done, especially with Yeshua. Hebrews 10:24 says, "Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and to good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see that day drawing near." Again, we need to not be a people that are isolated from each other. We need to stand together, to help each other out, and to lift each other up, and to encourage one another. We find in Proverbs 18, it says, "Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion." And again, we need to pursue the heart of the Father, which means day by day we're changing. Day by day we're learning more about him, and day by day we are continuing to write his word on our hearts. Okay, so keeping on with Exodus. Verses 8 and 9. So again, this last part here says, we're all going, we're taking everything with us because we must hold a feast to Yahweh. I'll come back to that. Okay. Because he says, Ki Hag Yahweh Lanu. Okay. So because we will hold a feast to Yahweh. So back to that. Let's go to verse 10. So, but he said to them, Yahweh be with you if ever I let you and your little ones go. Look, you have some evil purpose in mind. No. Go, but just the men among you, and serve Yahweh, for that is what you're asking. And then they were driven from Pharaoh's presence. I mean, he says, okay, you can go. And then he tells them who can go. No, that's not the way it's going to work, Pharaoh, right? He says, no, we are all going. None of us will be left behind. We go as one, or we don't go at all, right? Okay, so who's going to go? The Pentateuch from Raphael Hirsch, Samson Raphael Hirsch says this, what I thought was really cool. It says, we must all go. Each and all are integral parts of our community. None and nothing may remain, for we are all to form a Hag Hashem, Hag Yahweh, a circle about God. God calls us together around him, and when God calls us, he wants to see us with every member of our family and with our possessions about him. This is interesting because when he says we have to hold a festival to Yahweh, this word for festival, Hag, is the same root for a circle. And so what do we think of when we think of a circle? You know, I looked this up in the etymological dictionary of biblical Hebrew, and Hagag for circle means reeling, turning, or circles. It also means observing cyclical holidays or a recurring festival. Think about that for a second. A recurring festivals, cyclical holidays. We see we are to form a circle around Yahweh. Now we know, yeah, he surrounds us, but consider this for a second, that as we come and approach him, he gives us these times and these seasons for us to encircle around him, to stay with him, to be mindful of him. He is the very core, the very everything, the very center of who we are. And so we need to be reminded of him daily and day by day. And we must hold a circle around him. And we know he signed everything in circles, in cycles. The earth itself is in cycles. I mean, the days, the week, the months, they're in cycles. The Moedim, they're in cycles. The word, it's a circular. It's cyclical. It's in cycles. All of this is working together to reveal how the Father desires for us to live. You know, if we miss the Moedim now, they're going to come back around. We're going to learn to walk in them. We're going to learn to observe what he is giving us. Okay. So there's cycles and seasons that the Father has given to reveal certain things to us. Like we say, even with the Moedim, we see in Exodus 12, Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you." Consider that for a minute, that their redemption was to be remembered throughout generations. Their redemption was so impacting in their lives and the lives of future generations that it changed the calendar. So before this time, they had times that they kept certain things. But from this point forward, when you read through the scripture, you talk about the Moedim, you talk about the seasons that are given there, the prophetic timelines. I mean, they're from the month of Aviv. So here, Passover is a starting point for our redemption. It is to be a memorial for us from generation to generation. And each time Passover comes around, it's to remind us of the goodness of our Father and the goodness of how he has redeemed us and how we are continually coming back to him. And then looking to Shavuot from there, looking that we keep his word. He equips us and we receive his word, right? So Exodus 10:25, when we are delivered, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to worship. It says, Moses says, when you must also let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock also must go with us. Not a hoof shall be left behind, for we must take of them to serve Yahweh our God. And we do not know with what we must serve the Lord until we arrive there. So he's saying we're all going. All of us as people are going. And we're also taking stuff. We're taking us, ourselves, our families, all of the things, and we're taking livestock. Because once we get out here, we're going to worship. And we know that when they got out there, they had peace offerings and burnt offerings, and they needed these things once they got out there. So they had to bring them with them, right? So we will take with us everything we are and everything we have, because it all belongs to Yahweh anyway, and we will give to him whatever he asks when he asks. And we don't know what he's going to ask for. So we live day by day. We listen to hear his voice. We are obedient to what he tells us, because if we're obedient to his voice now, it equips us to be obedient to his voice later. All right? So here he says, when you come out, I want you to bring livestock with you. What if they didn't? Then they wouldn't have it once they got out there. When the time came to build the tabernacle, what would have happened if he said, okay, this is what you're going to need. You're going to need this much gold, silver, this much the precious stones. We don't have it. Where do we get it from? They were supposed to get it before they left Egypt. So again, just listening to what the Father is telling us to do now equips us for what is coming down the road. Okay, 1 Peter 4:10 says, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. So all the gifts that the Father has given us, everything that he's equipped us with, is to help build the kingdom. It's to help build up his people and to help us to be a combined unit as a people of Yahweh. It's not to tear each other down. It's to build each other up. Okay. Now, something interesting is that when they came out, we do find that there was a mixed multitude that came out with them. And this mixed multitude caused a lot of problems in the wilderness. Okay, let's take a quick look at that. Exodus 12:37 and 38. It says, "And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children." Look at verse 38. "And a mixed multitude also went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds." So what's this word for mixed multitude? It's Erev. Okay, the word is Erev. Vegam, and also Erev, a mixed multitude, Erev Rav, Allah Itam. So Erev is from the same root as Orev, which is the plague that we read in Exodus 8:17 or 8:21, depending on what translation you have. This is suggesting that the tradition of these people were a major source of trouble in the desert, because think about that. They were called this mixed multitude, but the same roots of these words is a plague. Wow. I mean, that's flattering, right? So what do we have to say about this mixed multitude? They were people who were not fully in, not fully out. They followed along with the crowd because, why? Who knows why? Maybe just because they saw the signs and wonders, they didn't want to be in Egypt anymore. But they weren't truly sold out and given into listening to what Yahweh has said. And we find throughout the journeys in the wilderness that there were those who were straggling behind and not really walking along with and trying to stray away, and all these things were happening, right? Let's look at this. So Exodus 8:21 or 17, like I said, depending on your translation, it says, "Or else if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies." This word there is the same as the mixed multitude. In Numbers 11:4, it says, "Now the rabble," which is translated mixed multitude, or those gathered up. And this is a different word. This is asaph, means those that are gathered up. "That was among them. They had a strong craving, and the people of Israel also wept again and said, 'Oh, that we had meat to eat.'" And so we find this mixed multitude among the people. Those who weren't really in, those who weren't really out, kept inciting problems, inciting riots, if you will, among the people. This is something that's important, guys. We need to not be people of division, of strife, of longing for the things that Yahweh's brought us out of. Always trying to look to the back, to go back to the past, instead of looking to where the Father is directing us and leading us and guiding us, right? We need to be careful of the associations that we have. Now, I'm not saying you absolutely have to avoid all people. No, I'm just saying be careful who you spend a lot of time with. Okay, I'm not saying you can't talk to people. I'm just saying be careful who you spend a lot of time with, because Scripture tells us and warns us about these things, right? 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." Proverbs 16:29 says, "A violent person entices their neighbor and leads them down a path that is not good." Psalm 1:1, we read this every Shabbat. It says, "How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers." Proverbs 22:24 and 25 says, "Do not be a friend of one who has a bad temper, and never keep company with a hothead, or you will learn his ways and set a trap for yourself." Proverbs 12:26 says, "The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray." Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend." And Proverbs 13:20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble." And Ephesians 5:1 and 2 says, "So imitate God as his dear children, and live a life of love, just as also the Messiah loved us. Indeed, on our behalf, he gave himself up as an offering, as a sacrifice to God with a pleasing fragrance." So what we have here is just examples and warnings and things. When Yahweh delivers us, he brings us on a good road, be careful who you're listening to along the road. And I'm not saying that, some people just have bad days and they need to refocus. We are all human. We all tend to take our eyes off the goal from time to time. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about you had a bad day. I'm talking about people who this is just who they are. We need to be there to help encourage one another and lift each other up, and to help keep our eyes set to where they need to be, and to help each other in these. We need that, but at the same time, be careful, because if this is who we're always being drawn to, it could end up drawing your eyes away. And we don't want to be part of the mixed multitude. We want to be part of the people of Yahweh that have been called out and have been redeemed and have been brought to the mountain and appreciate where he has us. Guys, let's learn to keep our focus and our heart on Yahweh and understanding he's doing things, okay? He is making a way. He never said it was going to be easy, and we do have to learn to walk this out day by day. But in the process, wow, we're going to see some amazing things, and his name will be glorified, and we will get to the promise. We will walk in that, okay? But we've got to keep our focus right. We've got to continue to look towards Yahweh and trust in him, okay? So that's all we really have for today. And just want to say thanks, guys, for tuning in. We appreciate the feedback, and it's good to hear from you guys. And just keep us in mind, keep us in your prayers. I hope that these Torah portions are a blessing to you. Hope they challenge you. I hope they encourage you. Okay. So until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Shalom.